Hi everyone. Today I'm going to read you a story from my new book, Wildlife Wong and the Fig Wasp. Now you've probably never heard of a fig wasp and you don't know how important they are in the rainforest. But this story tells you about fig wasps and lots of other small animals that are essential in the rainforest. We call this biodiversity, and it means that we need all creatures to live together to make sure that we have a really healthy environment. Now, the story I'm going to read you today starts when Wong and his assistant Chao Chen have trapped a bear. The bear they called Lai Shung, and Lai Shung has been fitted with a collar. The collar sends a signal to a VHF receiver, and Wong is tracking the bear. So Wong is on a bear hunt. Let's see what happens, shall we? So tracking animals is all about observation or looking really carefully. So Wong scanned the ground as he moved. A little further along, he found a tree stump. It was surrounded by chips of orange wood and sawdust. His bear had been here, using his claws to break the wood apart and licking up tasty termites with his tongue. It wasn't long ago because the wood chips were still bright colors, but a pill millipede was already crawling through them. The new creature. Oh, there's a pill millipede. What's that doing here? The newly created dark, moist caverns would make a perfect place to lay her eggs. She felt the ground shake as Wong grew closer, which scared her. Within milliseconds, the millipede had rolled into a ball and locked her armor into place for safety. She didn't move until he was gone. Wong pushed a branch aside, and before him was a gigantic fig tree. It looked like the mother of the forest. All kinds of leaves, lichen, and fungi were growing on its trunk. An insect, just like this praying mantis. Oh, hello. What are you doing here? Just like this praying mantis were crawling on the bark, and other insects buzzed around close to his head. These were fig wasps, but they didn't look like wasps you might be used to. They were much smaller, and their bodies were a glossy black. As he moved closer to the tree, the VHF beeping grew louder. Wong put down his pack, took out his binoculars, and squinted up in the foliage, which means leaves. He could see fat, round, purple fruits growing straight from its trunk. He spied his bear about 50 meters above the ground, having a rest. Lai Shung's full belly was flat against the thick branch, and his legs were hanging down. The bear was not alone. A feast was underway. To the left of the bear, some of the noisy barbets, they're a type of bird, were snacking. A colorful atlas moth flew by. The tip of its unusual wings looked like flying snakeheads. And at the end of the branch, Wong glimpsed the real thing, a venomous pit viper snake trying to sneak up on the barbets while they were eating. It was hungry too, but not for figs. Lai Shung had fallen asleep. Wong thought it was probably because he'd eaten too many figs, but he hadn't seen a bear eat figs before, and science is all about proof. So he walked quietly around the base of the tree, shooing away wasps and looking for bear scats or poo. Luckily, it hadn't rained yet, and he could learn a lot from poo. If Lao Shung had eaten the figs, his excrement, that's another word for poo, would look like a cow pat dotted with seeds. If instead he had been eating termites or earthworms, the feces, that's yet another word for poo, would be the color of dirt, more solid and dotted with tiny termite skeletons. On the far side of the tree, Wong found a soft poo sample with seeds. It seemed his bear had been eating figs. He took a plastic bag from his backpack and he scooped it up so he could peer at it through a microscope when he got back to the laboratory. That's a place where scientists work. Wong zipped the plastic bag tight so it wouldn't leak and shoved it into his cargo pants pocket. Lai Shung was still sleeping, so Wong walked towards the buttress roots of another nearby fig tree where he had full view of the sleeping bear. He squashed his ear against the roots and almost thought he could hear the two trees talking to each other through their fungi-covered roots. He turned his head and he looked straight up the tall trunk. The figs on the second tree were smaller and unripe. A buzz of activity was happening above him. Before his eyes, a fig wasp landed on one of the tiny figs and disappeared inside through a tiny tunnel the tree had left for this very purpose. Wildlife Wong reached high on the trunk and he pulled off one of the hard balls. He broke it open with his thumbnails. The inside looked like hundreds of tiny flowers. How was pollen spread from the male to the female fig flowers if they were all locked away inside the hard ball? Was that what the tiny fig wasp was doing when she tunneled inside? Wong squinted. Right in the middle of the miniature flowers, he could see about 10 tiny fig wasp larvae or babies. Did that mean they were born inside the cocoon? How did they get out? What if they didn't get out to pollinate another fig? Did that mean there would be no figs? And if there were no figs, what would his sun bear eat? Wildlife Wong had more questions than he started with. He was starting to suspect fig wasps were very important. Now, to find out how important and what Wildlife Wong learned from the fig wasps, I suggest you get your copy of Wildlife Wong and the Fig Wasp. You can purchase it right down there. And thank you very much for listening to my story.